All right, let's dive right in. I want you to imagine a delivery network so vast it could circle the entire planet more than twice, actually. And it's operating 24/7 inside your own body. This isn't some far-off science fiction concept. It's your circulatory system. Think of it as this incredible biological highway responsible for delivering literally everything your cells need to survive. And today, we're going to take a little road trip through it.
But, okay, before we hit the road, let's start with a couple of really basic questions. I mean, we've all heard of arteries, veins, and capillaries, but are they all just different-sized versions of the same tube? And maybe more importantly, what's the actual force that's pushing blood through this gigantic network to begin with? These are the key questions we're going to tackle.
To really understand our journey, first we have to understand the roads themselves. So let's start with the basic blueprint, the fundamental design for pretty much every single blood vessel in your body.
So here's what's so cool. Most of your blood vessels share a common three-layer design. The innermost layer is super smooth so that blood can just cruise along without any friction. The middle layer, that's all muscle. It's what squeezes and relaxes to control the vessel's size. And then the outermost layer is this tough, protective coating that holds the whole thing together. Yeah, they have fancy names, tunics, but don't worry about that. Just remember those three jobs: a smooth inner lane, a muscular metal, and a tough outer shell.
And this design perfectly explains the difference between our two main highways, arteries and veins. Just look at the artery here. See how thick that middle muscular layer is? Well, why is that? It's because it has to withstand that intense, high-pressure blast of blood coming straight from the heart. It has to be tough. Veins, on the other hand, are a low-pressure system, so their muscular wall is way thinner. That's why they can sometimes look a bit collapsed or flimsy. It is a perfect example of structure-matching function.
So, let's start our journey where the pressure is at its absolute highest. Imagine we're a red blood cell that's just been shot out of the heart like a cannonball. We are now entering the body's main thoroughfares, the arteries. These are basically the system's biological pressure pipes.
Now, the biggest arteries, the ones right off the heart, like the aorta, are called elastic arteries. They have a ton of elastic fibers that let them stretch out with every single heartbeat. They're kind of like a shock absorber, smoothing out that pulsing flow. But as they branch into smaller vessels, they become muscular arteries. These have way more smooth muscle, and they act like little gatekeepers, precisely controlling how much blood gets sent to your arms, your brain, or anywhere else.
As we continue our journey, these main arterial highways start to branch into smaller and smaller roads. We are now entering the arterioles, and this, right here, is where the real traffic control of the entire system happens. So, here is the absolute crucial point. Arterioles are the #1 source of resistance in your entire circulatory system. Now, I know resistance kind of sounds like a bad thing, right? But in your body, it is absolutely vital. By changing their diameter, by tightening or loosening up, these tiny vessels are the ones that fine-tune your blood pressure and control exactly where your blood needs to go from moment to moment.
To make this super clear, just think about rolling a pan across a table. The initial push you give it with your finger, that's blood pressure. It's the force that gets things moving. The pen actually rolling across the table, that's blood flow. And the friction from the table that eventually slows that pen down and stops it, well, that's your resistance. It's really that simple. But that basic physics governs this entire complex system.
Okay, so after traveling through the big arteries and navigating the traffic control of the arterioles, we have finally arrived at our destination. We've left the highways, and now we're on the tiny, local neighborhood streets where all the real action happens. Welcome to the capillaries, the body's exchange zone.
Now, not all these little neighborhood streets are the same. Most capillaries are called continuous. They've got a solid lining that only lets really small molecules pass through. But in places that need super fast exchange, like in your kidneys or your intestines, you find fenestrated capillaries. Fenestrated literally just means windowed. They have actual pores in them, little windows, that allow for much faster and much greater exchange of materials.
So how does the swap actually happen? How do oxygen and nutrients get out, and how do waste products get in? Well, it happens in 3 main ways. The biggest one is diffusion. That's just molecules moving from an area where there's a lot of them to an area where there are fewer. Pretty simple. For some larger stuff, the body uses something called transcytosis, where a substance gets packaged up and shuttled right through a cell, like a tiny ferry. And finally, you've got bulk flow. This is just the mass movement of fluid out of and back into the capillaries, all driven by pressure.
Okay, now this is where it gets really amazing. Your tissues can actually call for more deliveries themselves. It's a process called autoregulation. If a muscle, say, starts working hard, it burns up oxygen and creates waste products.
Well, those chemicals act as a direct signal to the local arterioles, telling them to open up and flood the area with more blood right when it's needed most. It's a perfectly decentralized, on-demand supply system. It's just incredible.
So when you step back and look at the whole thing, this 60,000-mile network of vessels is nothing short of a masterpiece of biological engineering. It's perfectly fine-tuned for pressure management, for traffic control, and for on-demand delivery. Which, it leads us to one final crucial thought, doesn't it? What happens when these vital highways begin to clog up, or weaken, and start to fail? Well, that is a topic for another explainer.